Hi there. It's January 21, 2026 at about 3:20 in the afternoon UK time. Today I wasn't going to talk about Donald Trump because I spoke about Donald Trump yesterday. But given that Davos is on and Trump is at Davos and causing havoc, I thought I'd just run through a few things about his stance on various subjects. And I intend to finish with a list of his better known lies because the guy is a pathological liar. He can't help himself. And unfortunately, we all have to bear the consequences of those lies. Now, first off the rank, I guess, not in regard to lies, but in regard to what he said at Davos, is that he won't use military force in Greenland. Now, given that Trump's a liar, that could probably be a lie. So who knows? But he says they have to negotiate with him immediately. Now, why is the short answer. There is absolutely no reason why Denmark or the EU or any of the rest of the civilised world should be giving Greenland away to Donald Trump just because he wants it. He's carrying on like a petulant child, again, over Greenland, and it is utterly ridiculous. The other thing is he's been copying and pasting private text messages from Emmanuel Macron and also from Rutte, who's the head of NATO. Now, these text messages, whether you agree with what's in them or you don't, the fact is that they're private. They were sent to him in confidence, and he has now betrayed that confidence and published them on his so-called Truth Social network. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that he's immediately lost all trust of anybody who is leading any country on earth, because they know now that they can't say anything to him that won't be broadcast to the world. So therefore, if they talk to him at all, they'll be very guarded. There certainly won't be any intelligence being passed over, and America's going to be the big loser in all of that. And on that subject, he absolutely lambasted Keir Starmer over the Chagos Islands decision. Now, again, whether you agree with the Chagos Islands decision or you don't, and I personally think they should have kept the Chagos Islands, but that's irrelevant what I think. Starmer did a deal which guaranteed the security of the airbase there for 50 years, and Trump agreed with it. Now, Trump agreed with it not only verbally back in January, he also agreed with it in writing in April. And now he's coming out saying that he doesn't agree with it. So this is typical Trump behaviour, in order to, in my opinion, steer people's attention away from the Epstein files, which is the one thing that he really has no control over, to anything else in the world. I mean, I think the guy would start World War III to stop people investigating the Epstein files correctly, because if they do, he'll be found guilty of pedophilia and he will go to prison once he gets out of the presidency. That's another reason why I don't think that he will leave the presidency. Now, I don't think Donald Trump has any intentions of holding an election in 2028. I think that he's going to do what Maduro did. I think he's just going to stay there. Now, then it's going to be very difficult for the US to unseat him, because he'll surround himself again with sycophantic cheerleaders that find millions of reasons why he should stay. Steve Bannon being the chief cheerleader in that group. Now, the fact is that Donald Trump is out of control. I think I mentioned this yesterday. He has psychological issues. I think that's widely accepted now. All you had to do was to watch that rambling rubbish that he spewed out last night, UK time, from the White House, and then his rambling speech again today, which was just crazy. Now, on the subject of Davos, there were some really, really impressive speeches given, actually. The standout speech by far is Mark Carney's, where Mark Carney's talked about the New World Order and not getting teary-eyed about hoping to go back to the old world order because it's no longer going to exist. It doesn't exist and it's not coming back. Now, Mark Carney made really good points about middle powers and how middle powers really need to band together to offset the superpowers like China, the USA, and Russia to a lesser degree. Russia's nowhere near the superpower that it would like to think it is. It is in the terms of nuclear weapons, and that's about it. Every other yardstick Russia fails on. But Carney's speech was inspirational, actually. I thought it was anyway. It showed that you can work with people and achieve results. You don't have to always be antagonistic. You know, he's opened up about his deal with China. He has pivoted away from the US. He's the first major player really to pivot away from the US, and he's on their doorstep. So that tells you something, because he can read the room. Mark Carney's a really smart guy. You know, he was the governor of the Bank of England. He's now the Prime Minister of Canada. He's got an unbelievably unblemished career, and the guy is very, very intelligent, and he knows about finance. And you know, there are two things where he differs from Donald Trump on: intelligence and finance. Now, Scott Bessent, who is one of Trump's cronies, he came on television this morning and said that Denmark was irrelevant in the discussions over Greenland. And then he went on to say, well, Denmark's just irrelevant anyway with regard to anything, because they're a small country. They don't hold many US bonds, etc., etc. So not only is that arrogance personified, it's unbelievably rude. It's unbelievably arrogant. It's also completely and utterly incorrect, because Denmark is utterly relevant when it comes to Greenland, because the Kingdom of Denmark controls Greenland. They own Greenland. And until they give the Greenlanders their own independence, or the Greenlanders even want it, and at the moment they don't, you know, Greenland remains part of the Kingdom of Denmark. So Scott Bessent's just a twit. You know, he shouldn't be allowed to be in front of a camera. But then again, you could say that for J.D. Vance, you could say that for Marco Rubio, you could say that for most of the people that are close to Trump, and Trump himself. They should never be let loose with a camera, because when they do, bile and rubbish flows from their mouths, unfortunately. Now, I'm going to go through a bunch of lies, which I've written down here on my Remarkables, just that Trump's told in 2025 alone. Now, I've only chosen about 10. I mean, there are hundreds to choose from, obviously, because Trump is a pathological liar. But just before I do that, it was good to see Starmer, Keir Starmer in Parliament, rebuking Trump today and saying that he will not be swayed on his support for Greenland, regardless of the language that Trump uses against him. And I think it's about time all world leaders stood up and told Trump what they really think. It's important. They've tried the suckhole approach. They've tried to stroke his ego. They've tried to make him happy at every point and turn. They've given him peace prizes. They've given him hats. They've given him God knows what. Nobel laureates have courted him and so on. So that doesn't work, because he's basically a prick. And when someone is like that, they'll turn on you, and they'll turn on you as quick as look at you. Now, Gavin Newsom from California put it fairly succinctly when, you know, he said these world leaders have got to start showing a spine when it comes to Trump, because sucking up to him doesn't work. Now, I would hope that by now they've all realised that. I know that Trump's having trouble getting meetings with people in Davos because no one actually wants to talk to him. I can understand that. Right, so let's go through a few of these lies, right? Let's start with tariffs. Now, Trump sold this absolute bullshit story to the American public that he was going to raise billions, if not trillions of dollars by imposing tariffs on other countries. Now, that money does get raised, but it doesn't get raised by taxing other countries. It gets raised by essentially taxing his own people. So all the money that's been raised through tariffs has been paid for by American consumers. Now, American consumers might not realise that, they may realise that, but at the end of the day, that's where the money's coming from. What it does do, of course, is it hurts world trade, because you know, if you slap higher tariffs on countries, well, less of their goods will be sold into that particular country. Now, this isn't a one-pony game, because the EU can do exactly the same thing. The EU could put tariffs all over America on their services as well as their goods, and America's industries would start to grind to a halt fairly quickly because of their dependence on European power and European population buying power, that is, I'm talking about. And also, the Europeans have a lot of other levers with regard to things like military bases and things of that nature. Don't forget, the military-industrial complex in the US is fed by people buying all of their weapons of destruction. Now, a lot of that stuff goes to various European countries. So if those European countries all stop buying US hardware, the defence industry in America would suffer badly. They're not an island, in the global economy. I mean, Trump's trying to put up Fortress USA, but it just doesn't work. It's been tried before, and it just never works. Now, the other thing Trump said was that there's been $18 trillion of inward investment into the USA since he became president. That's just a lie. I mean, look it up. It's documented to be a lie. It's a lie. And Trump subscribes to the theory that if you say a lie often enough, it becomes truth. Or as someone, as his first press secretary said in his first presidency, this is Donald Trump's truth, so therefore to him it's the truth. Well, a lie is still a lie, no matter whether you spell it Truth or not. The other thing he lied about, of course, is that prices of everything are coming down in the US, which is just not true either. And then he came out with an absolute perler. He said that he's reduced prescription drug prices by up to 2,000 to 3,000%. Now, that's like a magic act. I mean, that means the pharmaceutical companies are paying people to take their drugs, and paying them a lot as well. So it's a great time to be an American when obviously if you need some Tylenol, they come along and they actually pay you, give you the Tylenol for free, obviously, because it's 2,000% cheaper than it was, and then they pay you to use it as well. It's very good of them. He started this whole ICE rubbish with Portland, where he said Portland was on fire, is what he said. No such thing. That was a complete and utter lie. During the presidential campaign, I laugh every time I look at this, actually. He said that the people in Springfield were eating the cats and the dogs. And, well, maybe. Who knows? I mean, some people do eat dogs in parts of the world, but I don't think Springfield's one of those parts of the world. So, again, I think that was demonstrably just a lie. The biggest lie of all, and this is the one that's cost millions of lives, of course, is that Trump asserted that Ukraine started the war with Russia. Now, every person on earth knows that's not true, including Trump, but Trump just is a mouthpiece for Putin. So, Trump's essentially a product of his last conversation. So no matter who he's talking to, he'll then parrot what they've said. Now, Putin's pretty smart, so whenever Trump's going to meet with Zelensky, Putin rings him up and gets in first. And then Trump just parrots out the utter bollocks that Putin has fed into his shell life. So it's ridiculous. He came out and said that the US had spent although they had on the table, I should say, a budgetary item for $50 million to supply Hamas with condoms. Not true, funnily enough. And the ridiculous thing is, this would all be funny if he was a stand-up comedian, but he's not. He's the President of the United States and the most powerful man on the planet. And that's why it's not funny at all, in the slightest, in fact. He said that every drug boat in the Caribbean has been responsible for 25,000 US deaths. That's also not true. One thing that is true, of course, is that he has murdered innocent people on those boats, whether they're drug boats or not, and there seems to be no recourse for innocent people around the world who get their loved ones killed by the American regime at the moment, and it's a very, very unfair situation. And of course, the Epstein files. Well, the Epstein files is the biggest lie of the lot. He tried to say that Barack Obama made them up at one point, until he was just proven to be, what is that word? A liar. Yeah, he was proven to be a liar. So the Epstein files, I think there's a long way to run with those. I think Trump will die before he ever gets convicted, or a lot of people who can spill the beans will be dead, one or the other. He also said that Latin American countries emptied all of their prisons into the USA. Well, given that he's building walls all around the country, I don't know what entrance they came through, and I don't know that there's a degree. I don't think there's one iota of truth in that, actually. So again, one of his good ones. And then he sprouted on about how Canadians wanted to be the 51st state. Well, I can hear the laughter and the gasps of incredulousness from here. The guys, what can I say? And then, of course, he said that the 2020 election was rigged, and he's still banging on about that last night. For God's sake, get over it, man. The 2020 election was not rigged. I think there's more likelihood, quite frankly, that the last election was rigged through Starlink and Elon Musk and his influence. Far more likely that was rigged than the 2020 election. But I've got as much evidence for that as he does for the 2020 election. So both of us have no evidence. He's just a liar. And then, of course, the January 6th uprising against Capitol Hill, he claims wasn't an assault. Well, a number of policemen died during that uprising. We've all seen the footage. It's there for posterity. These people should still be in prison. He pardoned all of them. As far as I'm concerned, he may as well have pulled the trigger that killed those people, because it was an assault. It was an assault on Capitol Hill. It was an assault on American democracy, and it was an assault on the world order. So, a mess, basically. Anyway, I've prattled on long enough. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to talk about Donald Trump tomorrow because, quite frankly, it starts to make me feel a little bit ill.